a better Nigeria? Is it a myth, or do we keep hoping?
Nigeria is a highly religious country. How come corruption thrives?
Why is adoption not encouraged in Nigeria?
Is there a future for the Nigerian youth?
Being rich and famous, is that the only drive to be an artist?
What makes a great nation? Is it the leaders? What about the people?
This is Answers with Dr. Reju. Hi, my name is Onari, and this is Answers with Dr. Reju, where critical life issues are clarified. The role of the citizens in governance and nation building can never be overemphasized. And last week on the program, we had a Q&A on how citizens can begin to take up their role as major players in ensuring good governance. Now, Dr. Reju is here with me in the studio, and he has a take on current happenings.
Yeah, Onari, thank you very much. I just want to, first of all, maybe commiserate with those who might have lost their lives and properties in the last spate of bomb blast. But my concern, because of the resurgence of this insurgency, every one of us know that towards the end of the last administration, it's as if Boko Haram, they were put on the back foot, and this present government, I want to believe they rode on the perceived or obvious ineptitude of the last government, and now they are in power. And first thing, because it raises some questions, I believe the citizens should begin to raise their voice and let the government know that campaign is over, and we're tired of the rhetoric of what the last government did wrong. They are now in the saddle, and they have to really step up. They promised that they are going to deal with Boko Haram headlong, but I consider a lot of grandstanding here. I observe a lot of grandstanding, making big statements about relocating military command to Borno State and all that. It hasn't helped, but the question it raises is that how come now Boko Haram seem to now be having a field day? They're just throwing bombs anywhere, and now it's getting more confusing because of the targets that they sort of attack. And that raises the question, what's happening? What is the mind behind the government calling for the cancellation of all the road checks? These are the things that citizens need to be raising their voices to actually seek answers to. And one other kind of sound bites that I'm hearing, which we have to let the government know that this is not going to be acceptable at this time. If these politicians use these murderers to now have another spate of looting the treasury in the name of amnesty, citizens should never accept that, because a very, very wrong precedent was set the last time when some murderers in the south were actually used to loot the treasury in the name of amnesty. Because I've been hearing the government now saying that they are willing to negotiate. Buhari did not promise negotiation while campaigning, and citizens must not take that. He said he's going to fight this headlong. He's traveled to Chad and all these other things. That has to be said. Now back to Plateau State. I would like to challenge, encourage, illuminate the minds of every citizen in Plateau State that for every bomb that goes off in Plateau State, the intention of the enemy of this city and this state is to turn us against each other. We've always known that churches have been bombed. Now mosques are being bombed. Some news had it that one sheikh is being targeted. We have to know that those who love this city are much more than those who hate it. What the enemy of this city and this state wants is that different ethnic groups in this city, they turn against each other again. We must stand headlong against that. We must resist it. No amnesty for any Boko Haram murderer, and this city must resist every attempt by the enemy to turn us against each other. The missing link here today is that citizens need to rise up. And that's why I really believe that what we discussed last week, it bears repetition.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely. Okay, here's an anchor of last week's episode. Have a great listening. With me in the studio today is Obi Brown. You're welcome to the program.
Hi, Harry. Thanks.
Adams Lojok. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much.
And our chief resource person, Dr. Reju. It's good to have you.
Thanks, Onari.
Okay, Obi Brown, straight up with the questions.
Yeah, Dr. Reju, we have been discussing, governance and society. And last week, in the last episode, you really talked about, how we need to start inculcating values in our kids, in ourselves, and things like that. First question is, governance is strictly for elected and appointed officials. Is that a right narrative? And if not, do citizens have a role to play in governance and nation building?
First of all, it's a wrong narrative. Society governance is not about elected or appointed officials. It's actually the other way around. governance society actually exists for the citizens, because even those in government, the governors, the appointed officials are primarily citizens, right? So the citizens are the primary focus of governance. The reason people are appointed, elected into offices is to serve the citizens. It's not about them. That's why, for instance, you call people in, in the civil service, you call it civil servants, public servant. The public there is actually the citizens. They exist, all the structures, all the institutions are put in place for one singular purpose. For instance, if you hear that maybe the president of a country, his primary role is to ensure the security of the people, lives and properties. The life of the people, the properties of the people. So the citizens are the focal point of governance. So it's not about those elected guys there. It's about them. And that's why they are critical. What's the elementary definition of democracy? The government of the people, by the people, and for the people. They are the focal point. Every policy, everything that is being done, the primary focus should be the people. So the citizens actually carry governance. They carry it. Those guys, they represent the citizens. That point needs to be made, because especially in our context, we often forget that. People believe that the only way they can make a difference in governance is by going into offices. That is the least way you can actually make a difference. Right? It's the least way. Because the citizens are unrestricted. If I'm a minister of education, that's a restricted kind of role. But if I'm a citizen, the minister of education answers to me, the minister of information answers to me, the minister, everybody, so it's unrestricted.
Okay.
So that must be said. That citizens themselves need to understand that governance exists for them, and they need to more than ever brandish that particular role.
But there's a disconnect between the citizens and what we know as government. Now, what would you lay claim, and say this is responsible? Is it the citizens that pulled off, or the government? Central government?
Before you answer that, let me just still add to his question that governance, right, is a set of activities, and there's government and there's citizens. So just buttress what he's trying to ask. Right?
You're very right. You've really helped me with the answer to this question, because we need to be able to create the decision between governance,
yes,
which is an activity, but government is the people.
Yes.
And that's where authority lies.
Yeah.
That's where the power is. Now that power is given to some people for the purpose of governance. So that must be clarified. Now he's asking that there's a disconnect. Who pulled away? I would say both. Both. Because both of them, they have responsibilities. If one of them shirk in their responsibility, there will be that disconnect. Right? And then, especially now, when it is the citizens who are not alive to their responsibilities, it is more beneficial or more comfortable for those in governance, right, to carry out their activities without much pressure from those that they are called to serve. If the citizens pull away, don't expect those in government, right, those who have been appointed by them to come and catch you. They won't, because it's not in their favor. Especially when they are not alive to their own responsibilities, when they see governance as a way of, pleasing themselves. Maybe it's a lifetime ambition, maybe it's or whatever, and not what is meant for the people. So if the two of them are not playing their roles effectively, but having said that, the one that really needs to play their role critically are the citizens. They asked one guy a question. He just became a coach, a football coach. He's been a footballer all his life, and this is the first time he's going to be a coach. And they say, you are taking your team now to, pre-season talk. Which one is easier, player or coach? He said, coach. Yes, I'm not going to do any runs. I'm not going to do any runs. I tell people now to run. So the guy who has been called to serve others don't want any kind of pressure, right? And we help them. We now citizens, we help them to be their best when we perpetually put them on that positive pressure. The primary role of citizens is to put pressure on those in governance to do what they are supposed to do. If they don't experience that pressure daily, the natural tendency is for them to use the office for personal purposes.
But as it seems right now, the citizens don't know that this is actually their function, their role, and then the people in governance now taking advantage. How do they reclaim that role that is theirs?
Yeah.
You know, in answering that question, I think it's going to be of great benefit if we bring it down to our own peculiar context, to our own unique situation. Number one, the kind of government we run here, we copied it. That's a huge challenge. Because whatever kind of system of government that the people adopt must be a reflection of who they are. Having said that, let's put that aside. Because the question is, how do we reclaim it? Because this is where we find ourselves. We are in a democracy. Even if democracy is foreign to us. That's where we are. But there's a way citizens operate in a democracy. I think I said it sometimes here in maybe one of the sessions that my little time in the US, there's a refrain, there's a narrative. Citizens don't just have a right to demand responsible governance. It is a duty. It is considered to be a duty. Now, we must first of all understand that. If you say duty, it will come home more if I say that for you to pay your tax is your civic duty. That is, if you don't pay tax, you are defaulting on, is it a crime?
Yes.
Okay.
It should be.
In the same way, it's a crime against your own conscience, against citizenship, when you don't demand responsibility from those in governance. Now, first of all, citizens have to know that that's their role. And this is my own take. Citizens don't support government. I'll clarify. You don't be in the same boat with those in government. You support political parties to come into governance, right? Into government. But the moment they get in there, you are on the other side. It's not to frustrate them, but to put this kind of positive pressure on them. Demand from them what they promise to do. That's why every time a politician, those in government speak, citizens must listen. Every promise they give, you must listen. Because you are going to have to hold them accountable for that. If we do a survey in this city now, what are we expecting from Lalong? You discover something. Maybe it's something we still need to do. What are you expecting from Lalong? You will discover that many people will be expecting from Lalong what Lalong didn't promise.
True.
Right? So that's where you have the disconnect. Because when the guy was campaigning, nobody was listening because we all just get up for, with all the, the way we campaign here. It's all like a carnival. Nobody's listening to anything of substance. So we have our expectations as citizens. The government have a plan. I hope they do. So, but there is no cohesion. There is lack of coherence, no synergy between my expectation and what the guy says he wants to do. So that's where it starts from. I am here as a citizen to mount, unceasing pressure. Right? My well-being as a citizen depends on how this guy performs. We all can't go there. That's why we give give the assignment to some people. So first of all, we need to realize this is our role. Government are not good in themselves. Good government is a product of responsible citizenry. When they are being put in a position where they are reminded every day that you are responsible to us. So that's why I said citizens don't support government. It's unheard of. A government can't come and say, give me time. No. I need your cooperation. No. Get cooperation from your team. I'm not going to cooperate with you. I want you to cooperate with me. You are there to serve me. I'll bring back my point where I said the kind of system of government we run is alien. It's not consistent with who we are. African societies are basically patriarchal. That is, the father does what is good for the children. That's why you see in Nigeria, once anybody become governor and become president, it becomes Baba. It's Baba. Governors go to Baba in Abuja to go and collect, pocket money. That's what we do. It doesn't work like that in government. If we're in the monarchy, fine. The whole land belongs to whatever. But I put that out there to let us know what challenge we face. because democracy has become a reality. I don't think we ever go back to a situation where we want to have Obas or Obis or Emirs or things like that. If our mind desires that those institutions become more and more irrelevant because there are more problems than solutions. They can play some roles, settle some communal disputes here and there. They can actually play some, but they must be an agent of government. But citizens first of all have to know. And then when we bring it down again further to our own situation, over the years, by my own analysis, and I want people to listen to me, over the years, because those in government in Nigeria, from the federal to the local, because they have gotten used to a citizenry that is not making any demand on them, they have, maybe due to a plan on their own part or something that just happened unwittingly or whatever, they have further weakened, the citizenry, so much so that any desire to mount any meaningful pressure for accountable governance becomes more and more unrealistic, more and more unattainable. I'll give you some instances. When you have a society where majority of the citizens have to work daily before they feed, that's an unfortunate situation. That kind of citizenry cannot mount any meaningful pressure. Right? Because in Nigeria now, you can hardly call out 2-3 days of any kind of activism. It won't succeed. Because by the time you go to one day, the second day, somebody is thinking of, I need to go and sell my wares in the market so that I can feed my family. So I don't know if it is a deliberate thing from the government, to so weaken the citizenry. But with the way things are in Nigeria right now, I don't think we can have this level of responsible citizenship that we're talking about. But we can start from somewhere. We can start from somewhere, especially in those little pockets, maybe even in wards, in local. Do you know? I don't have figures.
Can a group of market women who have an understanding of all these things you are saying now come together? My imagination is just running. Can a group of market women?
Honari, if you study history, maybe you heard of Aba riots.
Yes.
They were women, right? They were market women, right? We've heard of.
Was the level of education higher than for their consciousness to be?
There's a principle. Somebody shared that before we came on air. That we need a bit of pressure for us to be able to form a bonding, right? What happened then was that we identified one common enemy, which is the colonial masters, right?
Yeah.
We identified one common enemy, so it was easy. Now we are fragmented. Our ranks are broken, so it's very, very difficult. Why you are trying to mount up a kind of pressure here because the man in power is from my own part of the country? No, you can't do that. He's our son, and all those kind of things. Yes. You see, the citizens of Nigeria, they have, in their ignorance, allowed the very few that found their ways into government to use what divides us against us.
Absolutely.
But I always say it: economic challenges don't have tribe. There's the way the Hausa man is hungry is the way the Igbo man is also hungry. Hunger pangs are the same, they don't have color.
So people are not hungry enough?
They are too hungry, but they have been deceived.
That's the point. Tribes. That's the point. I think the Nigerian citizens have been brought to a place of helplessness. Like I said again, I don't know whether it's an agenda to so weaken the citizens. I'll give you another example. Because if a citizenry, if they are not economically empowered, there's no way they can be responsible. I'll give you another example. Look at the issue of properties in Nigeria. It is hellish. It is wicked for us to have a system that makes it this difficult to get a title for your property. It's wicked. It's hellish. Call it anything. It is the height of wickedness, because people, the way you remember our session on wealth. We said no nation is wealth until the wealth is common. One of the ways you can ensure common wealth is property ownership. There are people in villages who are richer than people in the cities because they have a home that they can call them, but they don't have title. They can't convert it to cash. when it becomes something you have to sweat and fight and bribe to get title for your property, it's wickedness. And that's why sometimes I'm tempted to believe that those in government deliberately put those stumbling blocks so that the citizens can't mount any sort of pressure on them. I agree that we're having some semblance of, people are coming on social network, but you know what? It's still at a very, very low level, right? So we're not there yet. Citizens are still too docile, very docile, and that way we can only wish for good government. And if wishes were horses.
If you're just tuning in, this is Answers with Dr. Redru, where critical life issues are clarified. Obi, your question.
Yes, Dr. Reggie, this is explosive because we realize that as citizens we have a very crucial role to play. But sometimes when we think about appointed officials, we think about them as so high up there, so far away. As a matter of fact, it's almost impossible to get audience with them. But I feel that we could begin to play such quality roles in little institutions in which we find ourselves. You work in a university, or even a student in a university, or you work in a government parastatal or somewhere. What sort of roles can we play to make sure that governance in those little places is done right? But let me ask another question to you. You'll probably respond to both of them. And that's also talking about the roles of citizenry. In the last 2 months or so, the workers in this state have been on strike. Yeah. And the whole place was littered with refuse, stinking to the high heavens. And I asked myself a question.
When cholera emerged.
Honestly, and I asked myself a question. Was it going to be impossible for people to come together and say, let us see how we'll dispose of these things? In other words, when government abdicates a responsibility, right, can citizens decide, can the citizens decide to do something about it? And I'll say this because in the southeastern part of the country, right, they usually refer to little villages as autonomous communities. In other words, they do things by themselves. They bring light into their villages. They buy their own transformers and stuff like that. Can we sort of advocate for more responsibility among citizens in areas where government is being slow?
I'm going to respond from your last question. That might create a dangerous precedent because the citizen might be starting something that they can't sustain. You made mention of refuse, right? To clear refuse requires, some infrastructure to be in place. You can gather on a sanitation Saturday and say you want to gather, but the kind of refuse I saw in Terminus, the citizens don't have that kind of structure. They have, they are supposed to have been by their own tax and provide for such things. If citizens start that, it might be a dangerous precedent. There was a time, this is our brother in Ukraine. His church in Ukraine, Sunday Adelaja, took the government to court because they didn't pack refuse. Yeah, he took the government to court. But I don't want to lose track of where you started from, right? Because I learned activism as a student. And if today students have lost that particular, aspect of campus life, it's a tragedy. But what we are talking about here is this: citizens' responsibility. What sustained student activism in my days was our desire to study. We won't have a lecturer who won't come to class. We will make sure you are fired because we want to study. But today's students don't want to study. Today's citizens don't want to be responsible. They want the easy ways out. And we get the government that we deserve. Student union, even before we started putting government, student union wasn't a government. It was an activist kind of. Most of them, they were Marxists. They were, they had philosophical, ideologies that they actually used to demand effectiveness from the authorities in the university. In fact, the fear of student union is the beginning of effective vice chancellor in those days. But it was because these students want to study. They want good returns on the investment of their parents. But those things are gone. Those things are gone. Last week we spoke about, this defective citizenship beginning from the home. So, citizens, first of all, it is responsibility.
If you look at Nigeria, no government asks you for tax because there is this unending source from oil. So if citizens don't pay tax, there is nothing that is making them to make any kind of demand that I want to see returns on my investment. I can't be paying tax and be driving my car in potholes. So you see, it's a whole mentality here that citizens must know that it's not just pressuring government. They are pressuring government so that government can do what's good for us. But we must also be willing to play our own part. So it is, you really used a very good example, students. In those days, students can bring a whole government to his knees. Students alone. But you know, there are many things that we've sort of modeled up today. We are trying to fight for oil subsidy. We give the assignment to labor. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work. That's supposed to be something that the whole nation. You can have pockets of groups that will lead it, but the whole nation. But the beginning is that, first of all, let us appreciate the fact that we have been weakened economically. You see, you can't fight any cause without economic teeth. You can't. An economically weak citizenry cannot demand, cannot operate as responsible citizens. They don't have the nerve. They don't have the juice to sustain any kind of activism. Even normal civil disobedience that is devoid of violence, they can't do it. Because the guy has to go and ride his keke napep to, you know, to get something. He has to go and sell his oranges in the market. So if life is still at that base level, we have a lot to do. But even that life is at that base level becomes the starting point. I can't be on this level. Right? Something has to be done. Something has to be done. In developed world, public school is free. So thinking about school fees for your kid is already off the table. Public school is free. Some even add lunch because people pay tax. You know, we go to community schools and it's as good as any private school anywhere. Even in this state now, people, civil servants pay for 7 months and we're still going to bed. Something is wrong somewhere. Citizens are not responsible. Civil servants not paid for 7 in many states in the country, and life continues. If it's the other way around, if the government, those in government want to use that kind of a defect society to pursue their goals, you will see how it's sustained. They can use us to get their own political ambitions and things like that. We should also, because we have the number, absolutely, we are the one with the mandate, right? Imagine, have you seen a situation where the most critical institution in Nigeria, the most critical unit in Nigeria, they've not been able to execute any strike? Penkesan is a senior. If Penkesan goes on strike, that means we can't produce. The last time they threatened, the government are shaking. And what government will naturally do is to infiltrate their ranks. Infiltrate their ranks, put their own guys there, so that there will be this sort of collabo or something like that. I hope that's a generic word. You know, so it's so important that citizens must be interested in those kind of unions, right? That this kind of union must retain its independence, so that at least we have that particular ace. If the government knows that, if you see, the government does not want the people to know. And they've put us in a position where we don't care. You know, they keep giving us bits and pieces, and you know, we can buy credit on your phone, you have quarter tank in your car, you pay your rent, you are satisfied. And you see, it's so sad because Nigerians, I think we are the easiest people to govern. Little we are satisfied, or nothing we are satisfied, but that has produced the most, I don't have statistics, but the most irresponsible governance that I've ever seen anywhere. Those in government in Nigeria are simply wicked. And the citizens need to rise up to let them know that now we know they are not doing the right thing.
Unfortunately, we have to draw the curtains on today's episode. Give us a call or chat us on WhatsApp on 081-4456-9000. Check out our website and interact with us on www.answerswithdrredu.com. Like our Facebook page, Answers with Dr. Redu, or send us an email at answerswithdrredu@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are @Dr. Redu Answers. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Answers with Dr. Redu, where you can get all our episodes. Join us again on Answers with Dr. Reju, where critical life issues are clarified.